Hey everybody, this is Steve coming to you with another Shock Showdown video. On today's video, we're going to be comparing the Bilstein 6112 to the Fox Performance Series 2.0 coilovers. So these are the two very popular shock options out there for pretty much any mid-size and full-size truck or SUV. So we'll get right into it. One thing I will use as a disclaimer is that we have the only Fox shocks that we have in the shop right now are for the Frontier, and the only 6112s we have in the shop are for the Tacoma. So they're going to look a little bit different, but pretty much all of the comparisons I'm going to make are going to be applicable between the platforms. So let's get started. Coming out of the box, we have the Fox coilover. This is a 2.0 shock body diameter, and it is going to come pre-assembled, ready to bolt on, with a stem mount style upper mount with, a standard top hat and isolator setup with an Eibach, I believe it's Eibach, yep, Eibach coil spring, just a 2.5 inch ID coil spring. And this is going to be a 400-pound spring rate, which is a little lighter than the Frontier's factory 450-pound spring rate, but that's what Fox decided to go with, so that's what you're going to get. All right, we'll move that out of the way. And we will pop open the Bilstein 6112. Just like the 6112 and 5100 comparison video, the first thing that you're gonna notice is gonna be that the shock body is just simply massive. This is a 60mm shock body, which comes out to a little bit over a 2.5 inch shock body diameter, but those are 2.0 and 2.5 are the most common numbers out there, so we're just gonna use that. Another thing that you'll notice is that this does not come assembled. That's going to be something that you're going to have to do on your own, and it does not come with your top hat and isolator like the Fox kit does. So with the springs provided right here, you slam everything together and you take your OE upper isolator and mount off of your truck and you use it on the 6112s, and you bolt everything together and you throw it on the truck. The 6112s do not feature a threaded shock body like the Fox does. Instead, it uses grooves cut into the shock body to allow you to move this circlip up and down to tune your ride height to exactly where you want it. All right. On the contrary, Fox comes with a fully threaded shock body. So that allows you to simply just turn this lower spring perch up and down to set your ride height wherever you want it. Now, just like the 6112s and the Foxes, your spring rate choice is limited to what they give you from the factory. In this instance, Fox gives you, at least for the Frontier, they give you about 50 pounds under standard spring rate on theirs. Bilstein almost always sends you exactly a factory spring rate. Now, that's not necessarily a bad thing. Just means that for any ride height adjustments, you're going to want to use their circlips. Now, as far as performance differences go, there's going to be a couple things we're going to touch on. First off, the most obvious is that the 6112 shock body is significantly larger than the Fox shock body. The 6112 shock body is a 2.5 inch shock body, which means it's going to have a much higher volume inside to hold more oil than the Fox will. That allows you to run a larger shock shaft as well. So that's going to mean you're going to have a larger piston, larger shock shaft. It's going to be a stronger shock, and you're going to have more dampening capabilities. Now on the Fox, as I said before, it's a 2.0 shock. So you're going to have a little bit smaller shock shaft and less internal volume. So it's going to be less oil and a little bit less dampening capacity. Now, as far as valving goes, the Bilstein shock is going to be digressively valved. And what digressively valved means is that essentially, to dumb it down, your valving shims on your piston are preloaded a little bit. So they're tightened down more than normal. So that in order to overcome an initial hit, there's a little bit of extra tension on the valving shims that needs to be overcome before the shims deflect and allow the oil to pass through the piston. In the case of the Fox, and this is also the case for most performance shocks out there, whether it be Fox, King, Radflow, etc. Fox is going to be linear valved. So that means that there's going to be no extra preload on those valving shims, which means that, if you look at a dyno sheet, the force curve is going to be more linear, while the Bilstein is going to have more initial resistance and then it's going to taper off. So what this equates to is the Bilstein shocks are going to ride better on the road. They're going to have a tighter feel on the highway. You're not going to feel as much body roll. It's going to be, it's going to be a little bit better driving experience on the road. While with the Fox's linear valving, you're going to experience a more predictable ride off-road because, as it says, the linear valving, when you're hitting these big bumps, it's going to feel more predictable because it's going to be a more linear force curve. So those are the primary differences on ride quality. Because of the Fox's a little bit lighter spring rate, you're going to feel a little bit more restoration force, I believe it's called. But to be fair, this can all be accounted for in the valving for the most part. So it's pretty difficult to just take two different spring rates and put them together, put them side by side, apples to apples, when the dampeners that they're on are, significantly different. Now, both of these are going to be monotube internal footing piston shocks, so you're not going to have to worry about any sort of shock fade like you would on a monotube. These are both going to be very high performing shocks. They will, for the most part, you're not going to exceed their capabilities on a mid-size truck or SUV. As a general rule, with a full size, you generally want to go a little bit larger of a shock body just because of how much heavier they are. But, for mid-size trucks and SUVs, both of these shocks will be plenty capable for almost anything that you're going to do, outside of the very small percentage of people who are really, really hammering their suspension very hard. Now, as far as the lower mounts go, the Bilstein is going to use a very simple OE style rubber bushing mount. The Fox is going to be very similar, at least on the performance series. I believe on the racing series they use spherical bearings instead, but for the performance series, because these are the closest in cost, they're the ones that we're going to be comparing. So these also have rubber bushings, so you don't have to worry about any of that spherical bearing noise, nothing like that. One thing that also to cover is that rebuilds are significantly easier on the Fox shocks. These are designed to be user rebuildable, just like any other performance racing style coilover, while on the Bilsteins, they are not designed to be user serviceable. While they technically can be serviced and rebuilt, you need special tooling, and it is definitely not as easy. So, take that for what it is. If you're the type of person who plans on doing rebuilds, maybe 6112s might not be the shock for you. Thank you guys so much for watching. As always, if you have any questions, just leave them in the comments. People always ask me, hey Steve, if I was in your shoes, or if you were in my shoes, what would you go with? And well, between the Fox and the Bilsteins, I would probably personally go with the Fox. I really like the ride quality of a linear valve shock. I like the fact that it is easy to rebuild and easy to service. And I also like the idea of a threaded shock body. I like to tune my ride head a little bit, and it's a little bit easier than it is on a 6112. So hope you learned something. Hope you found this useful. If not, feel free to yell at me in the comments, but thank you so much for watching, and I will catch you in the next one.